In our headlines on this Friday, October 11th here in South Korea. Author Han Kang wins the Nobel Prize for Literature this year, becoming the first Korean writer and the first Asian female writer to do so, much to the pleasure and pride of the public here. And President Yoon-Ishiba attends the annual East Asia Summit in Laos and highlights his commitment to easing the humanitarian crisis arising from armed conflicts in Myanmar and Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Bank of Korea lowers its lending rate by 25 basis points to 3.25% for the first time in over 3 years, as the country's consumer price index for September slows to well below 2% on year.
The Nobel Prize in Literature for 2024 is awarded to South Korean author Han Kang.
We start with some exciting news for Korea's literary arena as author Han Kang is named the winner of this year's Nobel Prize in Literature. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
The Nobel Prize in Literature for 2024 is awarded to South Korean author Han Kang.
History made, again. That's how author Han Kang's remarkable 3-decade-long career can be described. Han has become the first South Korean writer to receive the prestigious award and only the second Nobel laureate in Korean history, following the late former President Kim Dae-jung's Nobel Peace Prize in 2000. The 53-year-old is also the first Asian woman and the 18th female author to receive the honor.
Yes, I'm honored and I really appreciate your support, the support of the prize, and yeah, I just appreciate it.
While this may be her first Nobel win, Han is already a celebrated figure in Korean literature. She rose to international fame when she became the first and only Korean to date to win the Man Booker International Prize for her novel, The Vegetarian. Alongside the Nobel Prize and France's Prix Goncourt, is considered one of the world's 3 major literary awards.
Han Kang's Booker win opened the door for more Korean literary works that incorporate unique perspectives and timely themes to be published and translated globally. This has led to greater interest in Korean literature.
So, what sets Han's work apart?
She has a unique awareness of the connections between body and soul, the living and the dead, and in her poetic and experimental style has become an innovator in contemporary prose.
But her works couldn't have touched readers worldwide without skilled translation.
She has consistently explored the depths of society and history, seeking true love and inner beauty in her works. Her unique writing style, praised by the Nobel Committee, has been brilliantly captured by her translators, resonating deeply with international readers and fostering empathy.
With this historic win, Han Kang is paving the way for Korean literature to shine even brighter on the global stage. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
And one Nobel Committee member has recommended Han Kang's Human Acts as the first book to read for those who have yet to indulge in her works. Our issue covers this recommendation and the critical acclaim over her writing.
An innovator in contemporary prose. This is how the Swedish Academy described author Han Kang, the winner of the 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature. And Han Kang's intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas and exposes the fragility of human life is being celebrated around the globe. The chair of the Nobel Committee for Literature, Anders Olsen, praised Han, saying her empathy for vulnerable, often female lives is palpable. The New York Times quoted Paige Anya Morris, the co-translator of Han's novel, We Do Not Part, who said that her groundbreaking work has reshaped the literary landscape in South Korea. Morris said Han Kang has braved a culture of censorship and saving face, and she has come out of these attempts at silencing her with stronger, more unflinching work each time. Novelist Deborah Levy told The Guardian that Han Kang is one of the most profound and skilled writers working on the contemporary world stage. Novelist Max Porter, who edited the translation of Han Kang's novel The Vegetarian, showed excitement at the recognition, saying new readers will discover and be changed by her miraculous work. For those yet familiar with Han Kang's work, CNN highlighted the Nobel Committee member Anna Karen Palm's recommendation to begin with Han's 2014 novel Human Acts, which reflects on the 1980 Gwangju uprising, when more than 100 civilians were killed during pro-democracy demonstrations. Palm says that Han's very tender, precise prose in itself almost becomes a counterforce to the brutal noisiness of power. Readers and media outlets from nearby Japan too praised the first win by a female Asian writer.
Recently, it's mostly been European authors winning the prize, so I was really happy to see Asian writers being recognized.
Kyodo News reported that Han Kang's works highlight the stance of the scarred who silently resist the social oppression. NHK also highlighted that Han Kang's many works have been translated in Japanese and are widely popular in the country. 이시후, Arirang News.
Also on the global literary stage, Korean-American author Juhea Kim has won this year's Yasnaya Polyana Literary Award, Russia's annual accolade for literature. The 37-year-old Kim was granted the honor by the Tolstoy Estate Museum for her debut work, Beasts of a Little Land, back on Thursday. The novel shares a generational story that spans from early 20th century Korea to the mid-1960s, taking readers through a journey of life. Over in Laos, President Yoon partook in the East Asia Summit on this Friday, pledging commitment to easing the humanitarian crisis in war-torn regions. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol set out South Korea's role and vision for a peaceful, rules-based global order, pledging to expand aid to Myanmar and Ukraine, and calling for an end to violence and subversive acts across geopolitical flashpoints. He was speaking on Friday at the annual East Asia Summit, comprising of 18 countries, including the 10 members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, as well as South Korea, Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, Russia, and the United States. With Myanmar's internal crisis being the focal point of the discussion, Yoon said the conflict is a test of the annual summit's problem-solving capabilities and that all violence must cease immediately. The situation in Myanmar has been spiralling since February 2021, when the military junta forcibly removed an elected civilian government, leading to protests which have turned into an armed conflict within the country. To improve the humanitarian situation, Yoon said Seoul will provide $23 million in aid this year, 4 times the amount it gave in 2023. He also called for a swift ceasefire amid the Israel-Hamas conflict and negotiations to release hostages, warning that conflicts in the Middle East also have direct implications for peace and security in the Indo-Pacific. Yoon further pledged to expand security, humanitarian and reconstruction aid to Ukraine through Seoul's Ukraine Peace and Solidarity Initiative, noting that North Korea and Russia's illegal military cooperation enables the Ukraine war to continue. Yoon said Pyongyang only aims to sustain the ruling regime while clamping down on human rights and posing a nuclear threat to the region. He then emphasized his unification doctrine, a vision for the unification of the two Koreas as a force for peace and prosperity across the world, as it promotes nuclear non-proliferation and new economic opportunities. With growing tensions in the South China Sea, the South Korean leader said the freedom of navigation and flight across regional waters must be guaranteed in accordance with the international law. Yoon noted that as geopolitical uncertainty grows around the world, the role of their multilateral meeting will become increasingly critical, and he called on leaders to prioritize dialogue and cooperation. As a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council and through its role as a global pivotal state, Yoon said South Korea will make every effort to restore peace through dialogue and cooperation among the involved parties. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Also in Laos, President Yoon and his new Japanese counterpart Shigeru Ishiba sat down on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related summits to reaffirm their intentions to promote partnership. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon files this report.
The leaders of South Korea and Japan have agreed to keep improving bilateral relations as they jointly address North Korea's nuclear and missile threat and work together to develop cutting-edge technologies. This comes as President Yoon Suk-yeol held his first summit with Japan's new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related summit in Laos. The meeting took place just 9 days after Ishiba's inauguration. In a promising start to the historically volatile relationship, the two leaders reiterated their commitment to continue strengthening bilateral ties.
특히 다가오는 2025년은 한일 국교 정상화 60주년을 맞이하는 해입니다. 양국 관계의 희망찬 미래상을 제시하고 양국 국민들이 양국 관계 도약을 체감할 수 있도록 총리님과 긴밀하게 협력해 나갔으면 합니다.
Yoon in 2023 reached out to Tokyo to overcome historical sticking points that soured their ties for decades over Japan's imperial atrocities such as sexual enslavement and forced labor. In the months following, he and former Prime Minister Kishida made frequent visits to each other's countries with the aim of building a partnership that looks toward the future. Yoon and Ishiba have agreed to continue cooperating closely from the top level with their so-called shuttle exchanges.
I intend to carry on and further develop the greatly improved relations between our two countries, which were strengthened by former Prime Minister Kishida and yourself. I also hope to make good use of shuttle diplomacy and work closely with you, President Yoon.
Addressing their foremost security concerns, the two leaders agreed during the summit to jointly respond to North Korea's provocations and blasted the regime's illegal military cooperation with Russia. They pledged to continue sharing real-time missile warning information with the U.S. and lead global efforts to send a strong message to the North.
The leaders agreed that these threats are not limited to Northeast Asia, but also pose a threat to peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region and globally. They also concurred that the responsibility for escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula should not be shifted onto South Korea, Japan, or their trilateral cooperation with the U.S.
On economic cooperation, the leaders committed to strengthening collaboration in cutting-edge technology, including in hydrogen and ammonia, as well as quantum research. Also, Yoon and Ishiba agreed to work together on their trilateral framework of cooperation with the United States. The leaders of the three countries last year agreed at Camp David to jointly deter North Korea's security threat, addressing regional challenges, and cooperate in strategic areas such as economic security, supply chains, health, AI, and quantum computing. However, the future of the trilateral cooperation was not addressed in detail during Thursday's summit ahead of the U.S. presidential election next month. According to a Yoon official, the timing for such talks and efforts to organize the annual Trilateral Leaders Summit would have to take place after the November race as well as Japan's early general election this month. In the meantime, Yoon and Ishiba identified the need for further cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo on regional and global issues and decided to expand the scope of collaboration in multilateral settings such as the United Nations and the G20. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea and Laos are setting up a comprehensive partnership to usher in the 30th anniversary of their diplomatic relations next year. Intentions to this end were shared during a summit between their leaders on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related summits in Vientiane this week. The two countries have also sealed deals on climate change and development cooperation. Meanwhile, similar bilateral plans were discussed between President Yoon Suk-yeol and his counterparts from Thailand, as well as from Vietnam during separate one-on-ones. For the first time in more than 3 years, the Bank of Korea has eased its grip on monetary policy by lowering its benchmark lending rate by 25 basis points amid slowing inflation. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun reports.
The Bank of Korea on Friday slashed its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points on Friday to 3.25%.
We have decided to lower the base rate by 25 basis points to 3.25%, given that inflation has shown a clear stabilization trend. The effects of strengthening macroprudential policies are gradually emerging, and foreign exchange market risks have somewhat eased.
The key rate had been frozen at 3.5% since January 2023 following a series of 10 consecutive rate hikes in a bid to tackle inflation, and this is the first policy pivot in more than 3 years. The central bank was widely expected to cut its benchmark interest rate following the U.S. Federal Reserve's big rate cut of 50 basis points last month, on top of encouraging data on the domestic economy. The country's consumer price index, a key gauge of inflation, has been seeing smaller and smaller year-on-year hikes over the past few months, until it rose 1.6% in September, the lowest seen in 3.5 years. In a statement following the meeting, the Monetary Policy Board said it expects core inflation to remain stable around the target level of 2%, but acknowledged the volatility of global oil prices in response to geopolitical risks in the Middle East. Eyes are on how this rate cut will affect the country's housing market and currently sluggish domestic demand. Data released by the Korea Real Estate Board showed a slight cooling in Seoul's apartment price hikes in September following a prolonged period of rapid growth. Additionally, the growth in household loans, particularly mortgage loans, has slowed in recent months. However, analysts caution that it could be too early to declare a definitive trend, as it could have been affected by the Chuseok holiday.
So we'll have to look at October statistics to make sure that there is any trend in place, if there is a trend in place. There is danger that the lower interest rate coupled with higher housing prices, even though it has slowed down, the interest rate cut may re-spark the rise in prices in the housing market.
In terms of the domestic economy, the BOK stated that IT export growth has continued its robust pace, while the recovery in domestic demand has been slow. Uncertainties regarding the growth outlook for the economy going forward have risen as a result. There is only one more monetary policy meeting left in the year towards the end of November, so the BOK will be monitoring the trade-offs between different policy variables, such as inflation, growth and financial stability, to make its final monetary policy decision of the year. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, findings show Korea's exports gained tangibly during the first 10 days of this month on the back of chips. According to the Korea Customs Service, exports soared well above 33% on year, amounting to around $15.3 billion. Semiconductor shipments overseas, which surged over 45% on year, were cited as the main factor behind the favorable export performance. As of last month, Korea's exports have been expanding for 12 months in a row. In the Middle East, Israel's military offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon continues despite calls for a ceasefire. Our Chuseok has the latest.
Israeli airstrikes hit central Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, on Thursday evening local time. The health ministry there announced that residential buildings in Bashura were attacked, resulting in 22 deaths and 117 injured. The Israeli military has not commented on the airstrike so far, while Lebanese media outlets reported that they targeted a top Hezbollah figure, Wafik Safar, the group's coordination and liaison official. Hezbollah stated that Safar survived the attack. On the same morning, Israel fired artillery at a United Nations peacekeeping base located in the border town of Nakura in southern Lebanon. The UN peacekeeping force stated that 2 soldiers were injured and some surveillance equipment was damaged in the attack. The international community has unanimously condemned this attack. Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto denounced the attack as absolutely unacceptable and a clear violation of international law, while the foreign ministries of France and Spain also strongly condemned it. The UN peacekeeping force serves as a buffer between Israel and Lebanon. The Israeli military explained that it fired after advising UN forces to stay within a designated safety zone. Meanwhile, after Iran fired around 200 ballistic missiles at Israel on October 1st in retaliation for the assassination of Hezbollah figures, some Israeli right-wing figures have called for a counterstrike targeting Iran's nuclear program. However, U.S. President Joe Biden has urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to target nuclear facilities or oil infrastructure. The UK's Financial Times reported that while Israel has warned of retaliation for Iran's ballistic missile attack, there have been warnings that if Israel targets nuclear facilities, Iran may revise its nuclear strategy. Chuseok, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, the Unification Ministry has confirmed the defection of a North Korean individual last month. Now, this confirmation follows earlier reports citing a South Korean military source who claimed that a North Korean man crossed the northern limit line on a wooden boat on September 17th, which marked this year's Chuseok holiday. The Defense Ministry here has also confirmed the defection on this Friday. This latest event marks the third defection from North Korea over the past 2 months, despite the regime's efforts to tighten its border. In the football field over in Jordan, Team Korea beat the host team 2-0 on Thursday in the absence of injured captain Son Heung-min. Korea took the lead following a header by midfielder Lee Jae-sung in the 38th minute. Then in the 68th minute, Oh Hyun-gyu scored his first international goal, handing the Taeguk Warriors a 2-0 lead and the win. South Korea is currently tied in first place in Group B with Iraq. The two countries square off next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Korea time in Yongin-Mir Stadium. For those of you here in Seoul who have yet to make weekend plans, a trip to Insadong may prove to be a fun option, especially if you're interested in the Korean traditional attire, the Hanbok. Our Yoon-Ishiba has more.
Korea's traditional clothing, Hanbok, embodies a distinct beauty. One brand that brings this beauty into everyday life is Sondaum, which means expressing one's natural beauty by preserving the distinct lines of Hanbok. Sondaum's director Kim Jong-sun believes this is how Hanbok's charm is maintained.
So using modern fabrics, this design uniquely blends traditional knots to add distinctive points to the hair, sleeves, and other elements. Whether it's everyday Hanbok or traditional Hanbok, there are essential elements that must remain unchanged.
Hanbok is also worn in daily life, as showcased in this exhibition, which highlights both its artistic appeal and contemporary interpretations, with participation from over 30 brands. Every year, Insadong hosts a vibrant cultural, antique, and art event, and this year the Hanbok Fair makes its debut as an exciting addition to the event.
We are here to get married on 19 this month, and we're going to have a traditional wedding in Hanbok. That's really beautiful, and I think that it's from the past, but it's really living today. And
this exhibition features stunning designs that capture the spirit of today's fashion while respecting tradition. And what better way to celebrate this fusion than with an exciting fashion show? Get ready to be inspired by modern Hanbok designs that challenge convention and redefine style. This Hanbok fashion show is a meaningful runway experience for the models, as wearing traditional Korean clothing is a special honor for them. In fact, many of them would love to wear Hanbok in their everyday lives.
Absolutely yes, because who wouldn't? Because the color is really beautiful, and especially it's really comfy. I heard that people don't really wear Hanbok in their daily life because it's kind of uncomfortable, but this Hanbok is really comfortable. So
the Hanbok Fair, which runs until October 13th, is an event where the value and beauty of Hanbok can be appreciated in various ways, and there's an opportunity to buy a Hanbok as well.
The female model looked beautiful in her tweed-inspired dress. It made me think it would be nice to try wearing Hanbok in everyday life.
Adapting to modern trends could be one of the most effective ways to uphold the Hanbok tradition, preserving its meaning, and ensuring it remains alive for many years to come. Yoon-Ishiba, Arirang News.
Skies were clear in Seoul today and the temperature rose rapidly as the day began. Leaving the chilly morning behind, the temperature in Seoul rose to nearly 25 degrees Celsius, making it warm. This weekend will be very similar, so it will be good to do outdoor activities. However, you should keep in mind the big daily temperature difference this weekend. For the time being, the waves will be high on the coastlines of the Gyeongsang-do provinces and Jeju Island. High waves can cross the seashores or breakwaters, so please pay attention to safety accidents if you visit the coast this weekend. Tomorrow morning will start off at 12 degrees in Daejeon, Chuncheon and Gyeongju 11 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 26 in Gwangju, Daegu, Gyeongju and Busan. At the beginning of next week, there will be frequent rain in the southern parts of the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, and those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session with members of the media. Do stay with us.